managing training process. I think you all are doing fine. Yeah. So now before I start today's program, I would like to know if anybody has got any question on the previous day's program that was on selection, development, and management of trainers. If anybody has got any doubt or any clarification they want, you can please ask me. Good morning to all of you once again. Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, morning, sir. Morning.
Good afternoon,
Morning,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Good morning. Anybody has got any question, any clarification they want? No question. So I think in that case, I will start with today's program. Uh, today's topic is on engaging or outsourcing support services. As you know that every organization, whenever they conduct their training programs, either they may have their own training force or the training infrastructure available with them. So they can use their own training infrastructure as well as they can have their own trainers and conduct the training program. But in many cases, in many organizations who doesn't have big budget for the training programs, they may rely on the outsourcing agencies for conducting the programs, maybe for the infrastructure, maybe for the trainers, maybe for the specialist people who can deliver certain kind of trainings on certain topics. Therefore, it's an important process even for the big organizations who are conducting training programs regularly. At times, it may be required to outsource with outsourcing agencies, training agencies. So that maybe there may be two purposes for outsourcing. The one purpose is for the entire training strategy. So some organizations who doesn't have enough experience in this field of how to make their training strategy in their organization, they may take the help of some outsourcing agencies who have got enough idea about conducting the survey in the organization. They can set a training strategy. They can make certain plannings how to go about in the training system in the organization. And the other part is that the other kind of outsourcing is that the organization have their own training infrastructure or training people who are dealing with the training portfolio, but they want certain trainers or specialized people for conducting certain specific programs. So in both the ways, there's a requirement of engaging the support services. So from that point of view, every organization should know that how to, if you are heading a training department or training portfolio, how to go about it, what are the things that you should see, and how it is relevant for any organization. That is important to be seen. So that is the topics of the day which we will be trying to see, look after. Well, for that, let me share my PowerPoint presentation to you. Well, so the first thing first, engaging or outsourcing the support services. Support in any area. It may be in infrastructure, the support may be in terms of providing the training strategy, developing a training strategy for the organization. It may be in terms of taking the help of some outside training guest faculty or some specialist people who can render certain kind of training. So the first thing, what is this outsourcing strategy is all about? It is used for outside training vendors. I mean, this strategy is made for uh, connecting with outside training vendors who are specialized in certain areas of training activity. And at times, almost all training activities are outsourced. It is possible for certain organization who doesn't have the training infrastructure. They may outsource their entire training activities from outside, from the outside vendors, or even sometimes for an existing organization who have got the training infrastructure. There is some emergent situation when there is a number of people are to be trained within a short period of time. At that point of time also they can take the help of outsourcing agencies. Say for example, in 1 month you have to train 10,000 people at different locations and different people with the help of different training mm, experts. Then it may be required that we should outsource the training activity. There is a full commitment involves conducting all aspects of training, and whenever you are outsourcing an agency, if you want, depending upon what kind of help that you want, what kind of outsourcing you want to make, at times it may be required that there is a full commitment to, I mean, to the organization, right from making the strategy, right from making the training strategy and training plan, the programs and all that, uh, developing the training programs, developing the materials even, conducting the training programs, providing the trainers, providing the infrastructure, maybe the entire thing. There may be full commitment also involved in that. But that depends upon the organization who is conducting such training. Depends upon their the resources available, their finance available, the resources available with them in terms of their infrastructure, resources available with them in terms of their training, the trainers available in the organization, depending upon what kind of emergency and what kind of number of people they require to train in a particular period of time. It may be as early as the training outsourcing may start even with the training need analysis. It may start with training need analysis through evaluation. The entire thing, the entire process of the training process may be outsourced. So in certain organizations, what they do, they outsource the training agencies who start with making the training needs analysis. That what are the needs of this organization in terms of providing training to the people. So right from the training need analysis, developing the training programs, selecting the training, the procedures, the process, and everything, until the last to the evaluation. What is the impact of training that has happened in the organization? Even the entire thing can be conducted through outsourcing. It may be for even for using infrastructure of the training firm. The organization may not have that kind of infrastructure available within their organization. They may use the infrastructure of a firm, right? It may be along with the trainers, or it may not be. So they may only use infrastructure, but they may use the entire thing. Also, they can use the expertise of the consultant of the firm. There may be certain consultants who are from where we do not require infrastructure, but we require some the expertise of the consultant, expertise of a particular firm in a particular area. Certain times there is certain training organizations who are expert in a particular area of activity. Maybe somebody is doing some statistical operation. There may be certain organizations who are making the developing the strategies for the organization. They can give training on that. So it depends upon that what kind of training that we want to give, and if there are consultants available and we require that, one can outsource that. So the strategy for an organization will depend upon the factors. So when you make that strategy for an organization, the factors will be the infrastructure available, the resources available in the organization, resources in terms of the infrastructure, resources in terms of the trainers, resources in terms of the experts available in the organization, their competence in developing a training need analysis, their competence in developing an entire training program and training strategy, and depending upon that, and also their financial budget they have got with them, that how much they can really spend, and what is the emergencies, what is the time period by which they really want to conduct a training program. Depending upon all these factors, some outsourcing strategy can be developed within an organization for outsourcing people from outside. And that's what is the outsourcing agency, the outsourcing strategy in an organization. Well, now let us see that what is the, if we are really making the taking the help of any outsourcing strategy, what is the role of the HRD unit of the organization? I mean, It depends upon how the HRD, the human resource development in the organization, is how much developed and what kind of activity they really want to do in HRD. But otherwise, in general, and HRD, the human resource development department, needs to do have these kinds of roles. Number one, they should be able to define the training needs, and that is the first and the foremost thing in any organization that you may have seen that regarding the training, the first and the most important thing is what is the training need in the organization, and that you must have seen, and you should remember that we organization will see that what is their expected performance in the organization and what is the actual performance in the organization. If there is a gap, then there is a training need, and that training need that I mean awareness of that training need will create a trigger by which one has to go ahead with the training activity. So HR human resource development will define the training needs of the organization by making the training needs analysis. Once that is done, then it has to be more specific that who are the trainees, which department and which kind of people require the uh, training, and so identifying the trainees that who are actually going to be trained uh, needs to be trained. That is the also a work of the human resource department. Then they need to see human resource development department need to see that what are the training programs which are required to be conducted. So identifying the training programs is the third factor. So depending upon the analysis, depending upon assessment of the training need and who requires the training, one can develop the programs because the programs will be developed according to the target group, right? And what is the intensity of the program it should be, what kind of program is required. So identifying training programs is the next factor. Then the selecting the training suppliers. Now here when you talk of outsourcing, so maybe the HR department will conduct their work up to this point, assess the training needs, identify the trainees who are needs to be trained, and identify the training program. Now then the next important things come that from where we are going to give the training. And if the organization doesn't have that kind of people or the trainers in the organization, then there is a need for selecting or identifying the suppliers or the outsourcing agencies who are going to give the training. And that's a very important work of the human resource department, that is identify the proper kind of outsourcing agencies who can really conduct the training programs as per the requirement of the organization. So selection of training suppliers, and we will see further in this program that how to select those. What are the factors that you need to look into while selecting the training suppliers? And then the managing the training suppliers. So selection itself is not enough. You cannot totally depend upon. And when you select that outsourcing agencies, doesn't mean that human resource development function is over. No, they have to oversee the thing. After selection, they will manage the training supplier in terms of developing the training program, what they're doing, what kind of training program they will do, and they are doing it properly, they are doing it in the right time, with the right pace, and so everything is being conducted smoothly. If they require any requirement from the organization in terms of supplying the various data, the information which is relevant for them, so everything has to be seen, and the people from the human resource department has to be present in all the activities while conducting the training programs by the outsourcing agencies. So an HRD unit's role will remain as it is. They will define the training needs, they will identify the trainees, they will identify the training programs, they will select the training suppliers or the outsourcing agencies, they will manage the training suppliers in terms of seeing that day-to-day activity and operations that is running smoothly. So given that HRD unit's role, now let us try to see that who are these kind of suppliers or the vendors who can become a supplier or a vendor. They're generally the training firms. So there are certain firms, training firms, who are their function is to provide the infrastructure, maybe providing the all kinds of consultancy in terms of developing a training system in the organization, or maybe about providing the training inputs in the organization by their specialized people available, experienced people available in their firms. So there may be some kind of training firms. There may be individual consultants. Who are individual consultants are generally those kind of people who are professionals who have got some kind of expertise in certain area, and they are prepared to deliver that lectures in the organization depending upon the requirement of the specific organization who are hiring them. So that may be it may be the consultants. It may be that there are certain organizations who are conducting certain professional seminars, maybe some professional bodies and organizations, they are conducting certain seminars, and one organization can take part by sending their representative in that particular seminar. So there may be some professional seminars. So those who are organizing this professional seminar, they will charge for such kind of seminar to the intending organizations who wants to take part in that. So there may be some kind of professional seminars which can really give the necessary input or the training to the people of the organizations. It may be a college or an university courses. So there are the people who needs to be trained in a particular area may be sent to some specialized college or some university course or some university programs, university training programs, where the people will attend the training programs and get the necessary requisite knowledge. So the suppliers or the vendors may be in different ways. It may be the training firms, full-fledged firms. It may be individual consultants. It may be a professional seminar. So as I told you earlier, there are certain agencies that the professional bodies, they are continuously conducting certain professional seminars where organization can take part through their representatives. It may be the college or the university courses. So an HR department has to keep in touch with all these kinds of people whenever they're required to to take the help of such outsourcing agencies. They have to always keep in touch with all those outsourcing agencies so that whenever required, they can send their people and develop their people through such outside agencies. Well, there may be different kinds of strategy for different kinds of organizations. Although in general we are talking about, but there may be different kinds of strategy. Say for example, we're talking about a large organization. Large organization will have a little different strategy than the small organizations. Well, in a large organization, training needs vary dramatically over a short period. What do you mean by that? It means that a large organization may have their own training infrastructure, they may have their own training people, but sometimes it happens there is an urgent requirement of training people. Number of people are to be trained in a particular point of time because there is a issue in the environment where their people need to be trained within a very short period of time to meet up with the challenges or the requirement of the environment. So at that point of time, there may be, I mean, in a very short period of time, there may be training need. And for that, they may require a ready-made advantageous solution. So if there is an organization, say for example, some government direction comes, some new rules comes regarding taxation or some legal implications are there in an organization, and the organization needs to train that people immediately within a short period of time, maybe within 15 days or maybe within a 1 month or 2 months, and the number of people are very large in the organization, then it may not be possible for that organization to conduct training program for so many people and to finish it within that short period of time. And at that stage, it's always advantageous to take the help of outside agencies who can give training programs give trainings to their people and in number in a bulk numbers at different locations maybe. So the ready-made advantageous solution is maybe suitable for the large organization depending upon their need to fill the gap of training resources. A large organizations may have that training program, but at times there are certain aspects of training, aspects which require to be given training through a specialized people or some specialized professional people. So that gap which could not be met within the organization, to augment that gap, I mean that one can take the help of the training resources from outside. Although a large organization may have their own training system, may have their own training infrastructure, they may have their own training centers, may have their own faculties. But when At times, the number of the volume of training is so big, requirement of training is so big, so it is sensible to take the help of outside agencies to fill up those gaps within a particular period of time. Um, Apart from this, at times there are need for very highly specialized training. For a very highly specialized training, every organization may not have that kind of that specialization within the organization. So for such kind of specialized training, one may require the help of some outsourcing agencies. Say for example any kind of maybe any particular legal aspect or some financial aspect or some technical issue in the IT, which the people may not be there within the organization, and even if there are some people who they may not have that specialized capability to give a training of that level which is really expected to be given. In that case, it's very sensible to engage in outsourcing agencies who have got the highly specialized knowledge, and their activity is only to give such kinds of training. So it may be sensible for that large organization, although they may have their own infrastructure and their training resources, but to augment those resources in a real sensible way, which can really help them in achieving their strategy or their goals, they can take the help of outsourcing agencies. So and for a large organization, it may the training need may come out very sharply at any point of time, depending upon the situation. They may want some advantageous ready-made solution from the outsourcing agency. They may need it for filling the gap of their resources and the resources required at a certain point of time. They may require outsourcing agencies for highly specialized training, right? So now let us see that how this is relevant for a small organization. Try to understand, and for a small organization, the first thing is the budget is very important, because they may not have that kind of budget available with them. They may not have those kinds of infrastructure available within the organization. So when the infrastructure is not available, then outside help is required. Also, they may not have that kind of budget to make a continuous program, a continuous training facility in the organization, and maybe they require that their training need may be very temporary sometimes. So for that, budgetary reason is one of the most important reasons why. Because if any small organization wants to develop their own infrastructure, their own training centers, their own training faculties, they have to employ people. They have to give salaries to the trainers. Now, they may not have that kind of requirement, number one, or they may not be able to meet up with those financial requirements. So it's better for them that whenever there is a requirement of any training, rather than giving salary to the trainers, whenever there is a requirement, they hire people from outside and give the training. So they have to see what is the cost required for conducting such kind of things. So one reason is the budget, and the second reason, as I told you, the lack of infrastructure. Yes, the infrastructure is not available in the organization. When the infrastructure is not available, then what you do? There is no other way out but to get the help of outsourcing agencies. So outsourcing agencies may provide some infrastructure, they may provide some trainers, so they may provide some kind of help in that training activity. So if there is a lack of infrastructure, even then a small organization may require the help of outsourcing agencies. Now there is some kind of rare training activity. Means in a small organization, maybe their training activity is quite limited. I mean, they are not training their people frequently, and only when there is a special requirement they need to give some kind of training. So if that need is sometimes, so the need is rare, so there is no sense of developing a total training infrastructure and developing their own training faculties. They find it more profitable to only engage outsourcing agencies as and when it is required, since the training activities rare in the organization. So that's one reason why um, mm, they can really engage outsourcing agencies. And the fourth thing is a flexible way of meeting changing and diverse training needs. I mean, whenever there is a requirement of a particular kind of training program, they call for such kind of training agencies and they give the training. Otherwise, they may not have that kind of regular requirement. And that such requirement may come up only with some change in the environment. Whenever there is some requirement in terms of the government regulations, in terms of market requirement, in terms of some specific development of some people in the organization. So when the training need is sporadic and sometimes not frequently, so it is a very flexible way because they need not bother about developing the training infrastructure, developing people within, engaging people within, recruiting people within. They can just take the help of outsourcing agencies as and when required. So for a small firm, basically there are two reasons. The lack of infrastructure is one very important aspect, and number two is the budgetary reasons, and number three may be that they don't require the training program so frequently. So the training needs are very rare. So in that case, as and when it is required, and as it is permissible by their budgetary resources, they can engage people from outside or the outside training agencies or the people, the consultants, right? So well, now after this we will find that uh, in any organization there is one aspect is very important to be seen. In a big organization, generally, or maybe possibly, there may be two kinds of structure. One structure is that everything regarding the training program is being maintained or managed by some centralized agency, maybe in their head office, in the HR department or the training department of the central office. It is also quite possible that if for a big organization, sometimes it happens that training activities are decentralized in certain regions, certain zones, whatever it may be, depending upon the structure of the organization. So rather than making it centralized, those are decentralized. So, well, so since both the things are possible, we should try to examine when there is centralized activity, then what happens? When there is a decentralized activity, then what kind of things happen? Well, so for this, the centralized activity, let's see if the organization has got some centralized activity. Centralized here means that all the activities, HR activities, the training activities are confined within one apex office. That may be their head office, training department, or their HR department. It depends upon the organization. So in that case, if it is centralized, the entire process is being maintained by them. So number one, the budgetary process is involved in the centralized department. Budgetary process here means that the organization looks into the fact that what are the kinds of trainings are required to be given to the entire organization, what are the expenses to be made, what are the areas where the expenditure is to be made. So they make a total assessment of the entire year, the forthcoming year, how they are going to conduct the budget is made in terms of what they're going to do, what kind of infrastructure they will procure in this year, what kind of training they will give in this year, what kind of expenditure will be involved in this entire year. The entire budgetary process is being seen by that HR department, the training department in the centralized office. The monitoring of the training policies. Now, since everything is centralized in a centralized office, it's quite possible that the departments or the branches of that of big organization, they may be conducting the training, but under the supervision of the centralized office. So that centralized office creates certain training policies, and every department or every branch or every zone or every region, they may have to follow those centralized policies. Rather than developing their own policies, developing their own systems, they'll follow those centralized policies. So they need to develop, the centralized office need to develop their own training policies, and which are to be monitored by the central office, that such policies are being uh, followed by the departments concerned or the branches concerned. As here, m- training policy here means what? Every organization may have got certain guidelines as regards what kind of training program the people should, the branches or the regions or the department should make. And for that, what should be their policy for whether it should be in-house training program or they should engage outside agencies. And the guidelines, the various guidelines and policies are decided and those are communicated to the at the down below, and those are to be monitored that those are being followed properly. Then providing consultation. It is the responsibility of that centralized office, centralized department, to provide the consultation services to the people down below, to their branches, to the regions, to the department, in case of need. Wherever there is any requirement, they need to have some guidelines, certain clarification, certain things, and then they will provide the consultation. Providing support, support in terms of giving the infrastructure
Bahari.
support, in terms of any policies, support in terms of providing the training faculties. So there may be various reasons for which the support may be required. Uh, Compilation of list of approved vendors. Now here is again, this is another guidelines which we developed in the centralized office, that they make a list of the approved vendors, because the people down below, the branches down below, the regions, the zones, the department, whenever they want to conduct certain program, the centralized office may have a policy that whenever there is a requirement of a program, you can conduct the program. But if you require to get certain vendors from outside, take the help of some vendors from outside, you will take from the approved list. So actually, the selection of those training vendors and compilation of the training vendors are done at the central office, and they provide that list to the other the branches and all that. So that whenever there is a requirement, they will select and appoint people only from those approved list of vendors. It is quite possible that entire payment of the vendors should be done in one centralized place, that is from that office, because the cost and the price and everything is decided by them. So the payment is also made by the centralized office. It may be their own strategy. The mandated training program. This is also another thing, that there are certain organizations, they may uh, make a policy for conducting certain programs compulsorily. So they may give a guidance to their departments or branches or the zones and all that, that you need to give at least these kinds of training programs at your level. So that may be some mandatory training programs, and that guideline is also to be given. So in a centralized activity, this all a very important process which are to be managed. If you are sitting in an office, when you are managing the entire activity of the your organization, training activity of organization, you may have to look into the budgetary process. You have to monitor the training policies developed by you. You have to provide consultation to your branches. You have to provide support to them. You may have to prepare a list of the approved vendors. You may have to manage the payment of the vendors. You may have to give certain mandatory training programs to the suggest certain mandatory training programs for your branches. This is all what kind some kind of centralized activity. Now, when there is decentralized activity, so in a decentralized activity, when what are the branches, the units, the divisions, the geographical units, or the zones, the departments, whatever it may be, at times it happens that the structure of HRD is decentralized. Training is decentralized. Decentralized here in the sense that the different business units, they can take their own decisions regarding doing the training programs, maybe overall under overall guidance of the centralized office. So it may be possible they will do these activities under the guidance or under the guidelines given by the central office. So what are the possible things? Number one, selecting appropriate vendors from approved list. Now, the centralized office may have given an approved list of the vendors. Now, to find out which is the most appropriate vendor for their requirement, and those selection of that thing may be done at the decentralized level, right? So, selecting the appropriate vendor specific to their requirement, because every department, every unit may have their very specific requirement. The suitability of that vendor has to be decided by them. So that is one activity which is to be done by them. The selecting suitable training program from the approved list. So in a centralized activity, as I said, there are certain mandatory training programs, or maybe at times the centralized office may give a list of the approved programs. That these kinds of programs you can conduct if it is necessary, required by your department or your business units. So selecting those programs which are specifically suitable for them. That again is the work of the decentralized uh, training system, decentralized training office. Making suitable to their budget. Yes, it may be that every business unit may have their own budget, because the maybe that centralized office may have certain guidelines regarding that budget, where they can make expenditure according to their own budget available. So whatever kind of training program is to be conducted, what kind of outsourcing agencies are to be employed and deployed, that is to be done according to their suitable the budget available to them. So making that suitability, finding that suitability is also in work of the decentralized activity. Conducting the programs. After all these things, finally they're conducting the programs for that particular business unit is to be done by them, by their HR department or by their training department, conducting the particular programs at their wherever it is decided to be done. And that is not the end of the story. Conducting the program is one thing, but then the next thing is, after conducting the program, preparing the reports for that program, on that program, and giving taking feedback and sending those feedback to the central HR unit. And that is also a function of the uh, decentralized HR department, the business units or the divisions. So they will make the program, make the report, and prepare the feedback and send it to the central office. So you can see there is very certain very important things if you are heading a decentralized division in a business unit where you are under the guidelines of a centralized office in terms of the training or the HR. So you may have to select the appropriate vendors from the approved list, which is supplied by your centralized office. You may have to select the suitable training programs to the approved list. You may have to see that those programs are suitable to your budget. You may have to conduct your own programs. You may have to send your reports and feedback to centralized HR unit. Well, so it may be at times that quite possible that the HR, the centralized activity, centralized in a centralized structure, HR unit of these business units or the divisions, they will do everything in consultation with their centralized office. So there may be a connection between the decentralized the divisions and the business units and the centralized office. They will do everything in consultation with each other. So it will depend upon what kind of structure is available in any organization and what is the practice of any organization. The next point is that the competence of HRD in implementing outsourcing agencies. Yes, of course. Uh, if you really want to implement an outsourcing agency, outsourcing from outside, then your HR unit must have the competence in doing that, because they are specialized people and they will come against payment. So you should be able to really make an assessment of such outside agency and how far it is suitable to you, and how you are really going to take the best benefit of those outside agencies. So for that, the first thing is the thorough understanding of training process. The concerned HR department must understand the process, and so that they can really have an understanding about how suitable will be that consulting agency or the outsourcing agency, how suitably it will really affect or uh, influence their department or their business unit, how it will become really beneficial to them. So they must understand the training entire training process and understand the use of that particular training program in that scenario. The skills in evaluation selection of approved vendor consultant. So as I told you, there may be two situations. The centralized office may have their own approved vendor, but then a list of the approved vendor. But then the business unit may have to find out the most suitable vendor for them. So there must be the skill for evaluating this aspect, to evaluate what is the training program training requirement, and how for the particular training consultant or the outside agency is suitable for that, how it is really going to benefit them. That skill should be there in the HR unit, so that there may be the best benefit of using those outsourcing agencies or the consultants or the vendors as required. As also, there must be requirement of general management for cases. The general management of those uh, vendors, because it is, as I told you earlier, it is not merely selecting the vendor, it is not merely engaging the vendor. The selection is one thing, engagement is one thing, the third is managing, because the vendors, they are the specialized people. One need to be very competent enough to manage them in terms of looking at, seeing at how they're really conducting the program, what kind of material they're providing, what kind of training input they're giving, how is really going to, what kind of result they're, what the organization really can expect to get from them, what are the feedbacks available for that, what is the competence of the trainers who are conducting the training program, what are the if the infrastructure is also given, what kind of comfort and everything is being provided to their to the employees. So their general knowledge, aptitude, and skill that is required for managing such things is also required. So an HR unit need to have some kind of competence. That competence is required uh, so that they can manage the outsourcing agency properly. Well, so whatever we have seen so far is that let me just have an recap of what we have done. The outsourcing strategy is important. When the strategy is required, uh, that strategy is required that when we require outside vendors for conducting programs within the organization, right? At times it may be totally outsourced, means the infrastructure is also required and training is also required. At times it may be partially, and maybe only the training programs or only the faculty is required. At times it may be required that the entire, right from the need analysis to the evaluation, right? So there may be different kinds of strategy. But even if it is there, the HR unit will have their own role to play in terms of defining the training needs, identifying the trainees, identifying the training programs, selecting the training suppliers who are going to give the training, and managing those people who are really going to give training to the organization. Who can be the suppliers? There may be training firms, there may be consultants who are individuals, there may be professional bodies who are conducting certain professional seminars, there may be colleges or university courses. There may be different kinds of strategy for the large organization as well as for the small organization. Large organizations, they may require certain requirement of certain training program, although they may have got their own infrastructure. So they want some ready-made advantageous solution for them for conducting programs, a large number of programs in a particular short period of time. To fill the gap in the training resources, they may have got enough resource, but there is a still gap because the demand for the training is very high. Also, they may have the need for some specialized people for conducting training programs. So their strategy is different. For a small organization, it's guided by two very important factors. They are lacking in their budget, they're lacking in their infrastructure, and that maybe it's also possible that training requirement is very low. So the strategy will emanate from this. The HR structure, the training structure in an organization may be centralized or decentralized. So it may be decided at the centralized level, entire thing, and then those are to be followed by the business units or the departments or the zones. It's also quite possible that this will be decided at the decentralized level under certain guidance, certain policies given by the centralized office. So it may be completely centralized, it may be partially partially centralized. Certain guidelines are there, and the business units are taking their own decision. It is also quite possible that this is done in consultation with each other. So it depends upon the organization, their own strategy, and their own policies available in the organization. And for doing all these things, your HR department need to have that kind of competence, and they must understand the training process. They must have the skill of evaluating the and approving the selecting the approved vendors. They require the general management capabilities of managing these people who are coming as an outside consultant, right? So with this understanding, I would now like that if you want to have any query or any question in your mind, you are most welcome to ask me.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sir, this is Juhi.
Yeah,
So, when we are talking about centralized and decentralized HRD structure,
okay.
so this has come in picture because of the decision making ability, sir.
Yeah, it depends upon the policy of the organization. What is the policy? Maybe certain organization, they have got the raw policy of centralized HR department or centralized training department. But
Right.
it depends upon their own policy, what they want, what is their perception.
But when we are talking about the centralized activity,
Yeah.
what I am able to understand is that the decision making power lies with the HR or the training and development department, which is sitting at the HO,
Yeah.
right, sir?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the decentralized one, they have the policy with them provided to them by the HR or T&D
Yeah.
department,
Yeah.
and they have an option to select and create an own training program for the
Yes.
employees in the unit.
Definitely. So it depends upon the organization how far they are going to decentralize. Maybe
Fine,
certain things are decentralized, certain things are centralized, right?
fine,
So
fine.
it depends upon the organization, their own policy, what they're going to do. It is possible that they'll make a list of approved vendors and they tell the people down below the business units to take a select out of that. So they
Okay,
may give that leverage. It is also possible the centralized office may say, no, we are approving this person and you have to only engage this person. So it depends
right.
upon what is the policy of the organization.
Fine, sir. And the second point in competence of HRD unit, skills in evaluation and selection of approved vendor or consultant.
Yeah.
If you could please elaborate a little on this, some example.
Yes. Now, say for example, if that the centralized office may have given a list of the approved vendors.
Right.
The vendors may be number one, two, three, four, right?
Yes.
And for a centralized, because centralized people, they have got some broad understanding of requirement of people, right?
Right.
But every business unit may have their own specific requirement, some specific requirement. So maybe they have the central office has given four vendors for financial training, the aspect, the training on the financial aspects. But then the
Yes.
particular business unit, they may have got a specific requirement in the financial area also, maybe on the balance sheet, maybe on the cash flow statement, maybe on different kinds of financial activity, right? So for that, if there is a vendor who is more competent in that area and more suitable to that area, so they can select out of that. So they need to
Okay.
have, yeah, need to have an understanding about that, what kind of training process or training they require for their department, for their business unit, and accordingly suitability choose from that.
So
That
they need to have the skills in evaluating that vendor.
of course they need to have this.
Fine.
But for that they may take the help of the concerned departments also. Doesn't matter.
Fine.
They will overall oversee that, but they may
Okay.
take the help of the, maybe they require to give some training in the IT area. Now, as a HR person, they may not have the competence to evaluate their IT requirement. So they can take the help of their IT department, consult with them. In consultation with them, they can find out that which vendor is the most suitable, right? And then
Right.
accordingly they decide that. Yeah.
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I have one question. This
Yeah,
is
please.
Arvind here.
Please.
You talked about monitoring the training policies and
Yeah.
creating a training policy for managing the whole training processes within an organization.
Yeah.
And we all know that there are mandated training programs also, specifically in the standardized and the big organizations.
Yeah.
My understanding from the research is that more than 80% of the training programs they fail. So why we are not able
80% of
to
the training program is what? What did you say?
more than the 80% training programs, they are not successful. They do not bring about the required changes.
Not
uh,
successful.
this They are not successful, sir. This is what research says. Only 10% are highly successful, and the 10% somehow cover things, uh,
Okay.
according to the research from various data sources. uh,
Right.
my understanding now is, if we have the a group within any organization to manage that, monitor the training policies also, why don't these organizations try to create new interventions into training policies, so that even the mandatory training programs are not misused? Lot of training programs is there where trainees, they are just sent to complete the formality of the mandated training.
Your last point, I could not listen. Just tell me last point what you have said.
Sir, my question is basically, when we strategize the training policies, when we strategize, for the effectiveness of the training programs, why instead of having so many monitoring teams within an organization, we fail to bring about the right set of training programs for the organization? Why
Well,
so many training programs they fail?
you were saying that in spite of so many training policies available in the organization, why the training fails?
Yeah, and additionally, we also have a monitoring team who monitors and keeps changing, updating the training policies.
Yes. Uh, so updating the training policies is done by the Apex Training Center or the HR department, right?
Right,
Now,
sir.
your question is why, in spite of the training, fails? Is that the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, nay, but then what is your suggestion? What you're saying? What should be done for that?
Sir, you know, we actually talked about mandatory training programs. My idea is whenever I talk about any training programs, it has to be effective and it has to bring some change. I will rather not like to do something if it is not benefiting me. So someone who has created a policy for the mandatory training program, he might have seen some advantage. But if in the organization, if I am monitoring the training policies and I am seeing through the training program's success rate and the ROI, and if I come to realize that yes, there has been the success rate is too low, uh, my duty and my responsibility as the policy maker is to come up with a change which makes things more effective, which makes each penny spent of the organization do some sort of benefit and advantageous role for the organization. uh, why it is not happening, sir? That's a bigger
You see,
question.
what I understand from you is that the possible solution is done, and that is also done in certain organizations, is that whenever certain training policies are developed in the centralized department, they should do it in consultation with the business units, because
Right.
the perception of the people sitting at the centralized office may not always be correct, right?
Correct.
Whatever
Right.
is happening in the ground level, they should be conversant with that. So it's possible that if there is a consultation with each other, understanding and discussion with each other, then the training policies develop. That will be more better and more advantageous for the organization. And yes, of course, as a decentralized unit, should have the ROI, give that feedback to the centralized office so that the next time the policy is made, the certain changes are need to be done. Because this is a dynamic process. Whatever policy is made today may not be relevant tomorrow, and it may change also depending upon the environmental requirement, environmental things what's happening around. So it is a dynamic situation, as well as it should be done in consultation with each other, centralized department and the centralized office as well as the business unit. They should uh, discuss with each other. And in many cases, the reason for such failure for the training programs is that the people in the centralized office, they may not have the perception of the people at the ground level, what they do,
Right.
at what level the employees are, and what kind of training is really suitable to them. That understanding doesn't remain with the centralized office where they're not apprised of that. There should have close coordination, understanding, and discussion and consultation with each other. That program is going to be much better. Whatever I could understand from your question, I'm just giving response to that. Please go ahead.
Yes, yes, yes. Sir, I mean, again, another question is, how in case of any conflict, if it arises between the centralized and the decentralized HRD, how it is resolved for the training programs? Like, there can be some conflict where the decentralized team, they actually think that this is the right approach to bring about effectiveness, whereas the centralized team
That
have a different
conflict,
view.
yes, it may arise, but it depends upon the concerned person who is heading the affairs. How flexible is he, and how much he is, ready to accept the point of view of the people of the down below or the business units. It depends upon that. Unfortunately, it depends upon more on the individual rather than the policy of the organization. An organization may have very good policy, the policy
Right.
may be very flexible, but the person concerned may be very adamant. So the
Correct.
individual factors, because the subjective factor comes in between. But what best you can do, you can always suggest for that. But it will become very unfortunate situation that when some person who is individually is adamant to a certain thing, that is always a possibility in any organization, and that can happen. Otherwise, there should not have any conflict. Even if there is any conflict, that should be discussed with each other and should be solved at that level. So that kind of flexibility in management should always be there. That is expected. Yeah.
But usually, sir, in case, let's say, if you are the person who is creating the policy for the policy framework for the organization, you would definitely look for the areas where there can be conflict and how it should be handled. And not, I mean, there has to be some sort of policies also to ensure that one person or an individual cannot drive things in an organization on his will or
Of
her
course,
will.
it should be there. It should be there. You are absolutely right. It shouldn't be there. Every policy that we make should have some certain kind of flexibility, certain
Right.
kind of room for accepting the new ideas and new thoughts and new things, because this is ultimately the organization is important. Ultimately, what is good for the organization, beneficial for the organization, that should be looked into. So any conflict comes only when people creates a conflict between his own individual ego and the organizational requirement. When there is a conflict between the two, then the problem comes. So one should be open enough. Organization should have a policy which is open enough to accept. As you are saying that being in a business unit, I can give my ROI. I can suggest the things which is really good for my
Right.
business unit. That they should have an open policy to accept those, which is desired. And many cases in many organizations, it is there, right? And even if they deny something, they do not agree to something, they should have enough reasons for that. And that should
Correct.
be always satisfying. Yeah.
Sir,
Uh,
may I, sir?
yeah, please.
Uh, taking on what Arvind was just mentioning, uh, wherein the problem of the centralized training policy definitely would be there in terms of them not being sufficiently aware of the ground situation. The converse is also equally true, because at most times what will happen is that the business units in themselves will not be really invested in the policy that has been formulated at the apex level.
Yeah.
And because of their not getting invested into the policy, their selection of the trainees is going to be perfunctory.
Mhm.
And as a result, what is going to happen is that the people who are required to be trained may not be going for the training. The people who come back after the training will not be gainfully employed. That is where the entire edifice of this training goes waste. So that is equally true as is what is likely to happen on with a top-down approach only.
Yes, yes. See, if this conflict is remaining in the organization, the business unit is not, they do not understand the big picture of the organization, and the organization do not understand. Sometimes the central office do not understand the real picture at the ground level, what's happening. So there should have frequent understanding and concentration and coordination and cooperation between the business units and the central office, so that they can each of them can really understand the real situation. And that is the reason why many training program fails, because as you have said rightly, appropriate people are not sent for training. Sometimes training is people who are being sent for training who are not desired in the department, right? So and as you said rightly, that whenever the training is given, they are not being gainfully employed in that particular area, right? So this is a perennial problem, and this, it is desired that every organization should take care of this, and there should have enough coordination and cooperation and understanding of the organizational requirement, organizational strategy, and according to that, things should be done. I fully agree with you. But
Sir,
then,
just to add that the last statement of competence that you added, no KSA, journal management, I think this S part is becoming now very important with these examples in mind. The negotiation skills of the HRD personnel, that
yeah,
how they're able to convince and place the facts before and then get the negotiations done for the.
yes, for that you should need to
Yeah,
give the program on negotiation skills to them. Yes, of course, it's required.
yeah,
That understanding is very, very required, and how to negotiate with people, because now people are highly competent. The vendors are also very highly sophisticated people. They understand many things, and you as a training head or the managing the training department should have that competence to really go into the details of the thing and get the best thing for your unit. I mean,
yeah.
just bargaining for your unit. Yes, of course, that's required. That's fully, I agree with it. and it's required nowadays. That's required. Yeah. Uh, is that all? May I go ahead now? Well, now let us see the next part, the selection of vendors. And what are the aspects that need to be seen while considering to be considered while selecting vendors? And for selecting vendors, we need to carefully screen the potential providers. Who are the screen those people? Who are the potential providers? May be suggested by the central office, may be prepared by us, a list of those people. Now, what are the things that need to be seen? Number one, the cost of the hiring. That's very, very important, because cost of hiring is very important. Vis-a-vis is what you are really going to train people in what area. What is the cost? So the cost does not mean that you get such people who doesn't have experience. You may get people who are incompetent at very low cost. So the cost versus the competence, both the things have to be those are to be weighed between them. I mean, we should try to kind of find out people who are really competent. At the same time, they are at a lower cost. The expensive provider versus experienced and competent people, right? So if it is the people are expensive, it is not always necessary that if it is expensive, they are good enough. We should be able to make an assessment of that. If they are the expensive, do they have that kind of experience and competence which you really were looking for? So even if they have got low competence, if there is low cost and they have got competence, it's very good. And they are expensive provider, then they must be giving some extraordinary thing which is required for us. I mean, these two things have to be balanced very well. The ability to provide desired cases to the employees. I mean, how far these vendors which you are going to select is going to give the knowledge that is expected, the skills or the attitude, all the three things. Are they providing that? Are they really going to make that, create that transfer of training to the people, which ultimately is going to benefit the organization? So their ability to provide them. How do you see that ability? You may have to see that I have given later on. You may have to see their past experiences. You may have to see their past records, how they have done it. So there may be certain things you have to examine before really hiring such people and finding out who is the most suitable for that. Well, for doing this, there are certain pertinent questions that need to be asked, and that questions are that is the pertinent questions which is need to assess the training provider capabilities. If you look into this question, most of the things we may be able to really understand the provider. The trainer's background, if it is only the trainer being provided by them, what is the background of the trainer in terms of his education, in terms of experience, that one has to see, right? Trainer's background, that in terms of their education and experience. Has the trainer provided this particular training programs and services before? I mean, what is their past experience in terms of providing these kinds of training to other organizations? They have already done it. We have to find out that. We have to find out those statistics of the data from outside, right? So that they have already provided such kind of training. Have their trainer been evaluated? If so, what is the outcome? And the evaluation of the training program. Now that evaluation, if it is coming for the first time with you, may not have, but you can have this evaluation from some other organizations who have already hired organizations and to get an evaluation from them, evaluators. That evaluation is very much required. Reference of people who can knowledgeably speak about trainers' products and services. It's always desirable. But while selecting a training consultant or selecting a trainer, uh, we should know from a person who have already hired such kind of trainer, and what is their experience about it, who can really talk about that, who can really vouch for that. I mean, that kind of reference to find out, and that is always desirable. That's possible if you can look into his past activities. You can even ask them. One can even ask that outside agency or that faculty that what are the areas, what are the organizations where you have provided training in the past. You can take the numbers and all that so that you can have a reference, get a reference from those organizations about their capability, their competence, and to have the to create that, make that evaluation. So reference of people who can really speak about them, you can get from them, and you can ensure from them that they have really provided that kind of training which is suitable for you. Can the trainer give names and permission to contact such names of permission and permission to contact such people? I mean, if it is a good organization, if it is a good vendor, if it's a good faculty, is a competent faculty, is an established faculty, they will not mind sharing such information of the people or the place where they have conducted such training programs. They'll openly they say, yes, you can very well understand, take the details from such and such people. So you can take those numbers and their permission to contact them. Trainees who receive training under him. So from that you can find out who are the people, what kind of target group are trained by such trainer, the person who was the trainer's primary contact in client in the organization. I mean, who are the person, if suppose there is a consultant, there is a trainer who have provided training program in a particular organization, if you know the person who was managing that entire training program, he will have entire information about that particular faculty. So you can talk to him. The person who is primarily was responsible for conducting the program, you can have access to him, you can talk to him, and one can really get an idea from him about the competence and capability of the trainer. The person who monitor the training, the person who coordinate the training. So the person who may have monitored or coordinated training program in certain organization, contact him and you can understand and evaluate. The sixth point, how the trainer develops a program. To get an idea about that particular trainer, how he develops the program, what is the process, how he does it, what is his the content of the program, how he delivers the training, what is his mode of training, how effective is his training delivery. I mean, how what competency you have got really managing people in the classroom. You can get entire idea about that person from those references. Uh, how the trainer provide the training service. I mean, how he's providing, what is his competence, what is his training methodology, is he using all learning styles from that I mean, auditory videos and experience and conducting certain exercises and all that. I mean, you can have an entire idea about the trainer and that how effective he will be for your organization. Can the trainer provide outline of his approach or process? No, it's a requirement. I mean, when you are hiring some person for conducting some training program in the organization, we should ask him to give an outline of his approach of the on the training program. How is, if there is a particular subject, what are the, what are the details of that particular subject is going to deliver, talk about, what are the topics and the lesson plan maybe we can get from that particular trainer. Whether it is suitable to other culture and budget, that is also is question, that what kind of training program, if there is a training program, whether that suits to the culture of this organization, because a trainer may develop a training program according to his perception and awareness, and it may be a generic program. But for an organization, we have to see that how specifically this is true for our culture and for the background and the experience and the competence of the people in my organization. So according to that, that has to be assessed, and if required, those can be changed. If those are to be monitored or customized according to the requirement of the specific organization. And also, the budget is to be seen, that for a small program, if you give 10 days program, that is not a suitable thing. You have to see that requirement, the cost involved in it, and the requirement of it. The sample of materials, handouts, exercise videos may be taken from that faculty, because that's important, because it is on the basis of that you are really going to understand what is going to happen. So the materials, and that will ensure that real kind of training program is going to happen. The materials, handouts, exercises, what is going to do, as far as possible, that should be provided by the trainer. If not specific to the organization, how to make it appropriate to the organization. I was telling you that the training program may be very generic, which is being going to be supplied by the trainer. So you need to make it more specific to the organization. You need to customize it as per the requirement of the organization, right? So this is a very important point, that while selecting a vendor, while selecting a consultant, while selecting a trainer, these points are to be taken into consideration regarding the competence and the capability and suitability of the trainer for our the organization, right? That's a very important. Now, the one thing is selecting the trainer, selecting the provider, selecting the consultant, selecting the faculty for the for training program. But that's not enough. We need to right from the moment when you select the trainer, till the end of the entire program, we need to the training head has to manage that consultant. And so, for managing the training provider, there are certain things which have to be looked into. And there should be clear direction to them, that what is expected from them, what is the expectation of the organization, what is the target group of people, what is the level of understanding, what is their expectation from the training program. There should have a very clear direction, so that the concerned faculty or the trainer can provide the training program exactly as per the requirement of the specific organization. The goals and expectations specifically should be spelled out, but what is expected from them, what is the goal of the organization, what the organization is expecting to achieve from this training program, that should be made known to the trainer, because the trainer will develop his training program according to that expectation, according to that goal perceived by the organization concerned. There should have logical flow with minimum disruption. Logical flow of the training provider should give a training program with a complete logical flow, and there should not have any disruption. There should have proper delivery and training delivery, and resulting into actual transfer of training to the people. Monitoring plans and goals of providers, and what the provider wants to do, what is his goal, how he is planning the entire program. So we can monitor it, or the in charge can always have a consultation with the provider before the training program, to understand and assess what the trainer is going to do, how he is going to plan for his entire program, how for this will become suitable, and for the organization. That has to be seen. So from that point of view, there should have enough open communication between the training function and the provider. The training department, the training in charge, the training manager, whatsoever it may be, should have an open communication with the provider, what he is going to deliver, how he is going to deliver, what is our expectation, what he is going to do according to that, what is his plan, and everything should be discussed, so that the best results can be achieved out of the training program, out of that expenses that is being made for the training program. That has to be seen. Now, the next point that is important to be seen, that what is outside outsourcing strategy and the cost. These two are important things. Outsourcing is fine, it's very good for getting a very good faculty, getting a very specialized person, specialized agency, but the cost is also involved. Cost in terms of, and even if you look connected with the ROI, there's nothing wrong in that. So, uh, why it is beneficial? I mean, there are two things when you make an outsourcing. As it is told earlier, that outsourcing at times is beneficial. It's beneficial because if your requirement of training is not very frequent, if only sometimes there is a, occasionally there is some training program is to be provided, it is better not to have your own training faculty, and then giving them salary and all that, salary to your staff and all that. So it's better at that point of time to have an outsourcing. So there is substantial savings in terms of HRD staff, salaries, benefits, and taxes if you don't have your own training department, or even if you have a training department but you are not providing the training, so you don't have any training infrastructure, like you don't have any faculty and trainers in the organization, and you are only outsourcing it. So you may have you may be saving that amount. But that is possible only when the training programs are very not frequent, but it is only sometimes. Vendor is paid only for a contract period. The benefit of having a vendor is that he will be paid only for the period for which is contracted. So maybe for one program, maybe for two programs, maybe for three programs, depending upon the requirement. So the cost involved is only for that limited period of time, rather than having an entire training force for the whole year in the organization. So there is a cost benefit is there. No layoffs or staff relocation when training is ceased. So when there is a we're having outsourcing people, so they come, they give the training, and then they go. So there is no question of having any staff. There's no deployment of staff, no relocation of staff. So it's quite simple. People coming, giving training, and the contract is over, the cost is over, expenses are over, everything is finished. Vendors program development costs spread among clients. Look at from the point of view of the vendor. If there are certain vendors who are competent or experienced in a particular area of training, so develop one training program, and that training program they are providing to various organizations. So the cost is spread among them. So they are while negotiating with them regarding the cost of the training program, one should keep in mind and one should put in so that the vendor with the vendor one can make a very good negotiation regarding the cost involved in it, because the vendors program development cost is spread among clients, particularly for those vendors who are specialized in a particular area of training. Train the trainer program reduces cost. This is another concept. See, if you do not want to have uh, I mean, it may be costly for hiring an outside agency in the organization regularly. Rather than that, you send some of your people to the vendor, or the vendor comes and gives training to some of the people in the organization. Then maybe 5 people or 10 people, depending upon the requirement, and those becomes your trained faculty, and those faculty give the training in the organization. So therefore, the cost is reduced to a large extent. Rather than contacting many programs by the consultant, you only train your few people by the vendor, and then those trained faculties, they give training to the people in house. That reduces the cost of the training program. Well, this is as I'm saying, as I'm telling you that your the outsourcing strategy sometimes reduces the cost, but it may not always be sensible to have entire outsourcing strategy, or it may not be sensible to have everything in house. So there may be a mixed strategy, right? Combination of providing training internally and contracting with training providers. So there are some a combination of these two things. Some training programs are being done internally, some training programs being done through the by contracting the provider. So there may be combination of centralized and decentralized approach. This is another mixed strategy. You can have centralized and decentralized approach, mix of that, wherever certain things are centralized and certain things are decentralized, and those people, they work in tandem. That is very important, that cooperation and collaboration and consultation with each other is very, very important. Because as some of the question came here, is that the perception of the people at the ground level and the by the centralized office is very important. Similarly, the business unit should have the whole perception of the organization, the organization policy, organization strategy. That perception may be missing. So there should have a combination of both the things. There should have collaboration and cooperation with each other. Now there may be some kind of, sometimes it is possible in a mixed strategy only in case of some new training which has not been done earlier by the organization, that can be outsourced. All other things may be in-house, but some programs are being outsourced. The training developed by providers are customized to organizational requirements. This is another thing. The providers which are developing the training program, those are customized the organizational requirement. Their generic programs are made to like the requirement of the organization. The cost of hiring contracted consultant offset the cost of staffing need. Yes, of course. When the mixed strategy, that there may be some cost of hiring the consultant, but it should offset the cost of the staffing need. Now, cost of staffing should be more than cost of hiring, then it is valuable. If the cost of hiring is less than the cost of hiring is more than the cost of staffing need, then it is not sensible. I mean, if you provide, develop your own staff, whatever expenditure you make, your cost of hiring should be less than that. Then it is a profitable situation. So there may be some mixed strategy depending upon the who is whether the program is being to conducted internally or externally, whether your training activity should be centralized and decentralized, when in a particular situation when the training is to be outsourced, how the training program is to be customized as the requirement of the organization, right? So your the cost of the hiring vis-a-vis the cost of staffing me, these are to be seen. Now one very important last point is that even if we select a vendor, it does not mean that the role of HRD is over. As I was telling earlier also, that management of vendor is important. Somebody from the organization has to closely work with the vendor. Right from the day one, they should monitor the vendor, talk with vendor, collaborate and cooperate with the vendor. Right, that is required. The function of HR is still continue to happen. Understanding of organization culture and how things work are to be shared. I mean, if you are calling for some vendor, I mean, that vendor or that faculty does not know about the culture of the organization, and he can change his training program according to the need, according to the culture of the organization, what is expected from them. That has to be supplied to them, that has to be shared with them. So, the responsibility of the HR department is to share with them, collaborate with that particular trainer or the faculty for proper delivery of training. Requirement of providing direction and insight to provider as to how best the program can be made suitable to the organization. The important thing is the suitability of the organization. The trainer may have his own perception of the program, which may be true for certain organizations, which may not be true for certain organizations. So those are to be, as said earlier, customized, changed as per the needs of the organization. But that is possible only when you collaborate with that trainer or the faculty or outside vendor. Connecting with the trainees and customized training accordingly. Yes, connecting with the trainees depending on the level of training, because the consultant doesn't have any perception of the target group. So that perception is lying with the HR department. So connecting with the trainee and customized training accordingly by sharing those information, sharing the level of the target group with the consultant, right? That has to be done. Helping in conducting performance review. Yes, what is the what performance has been done, I mean what kind of performance has been achieved by this training program, that review is to be made, so that if it is a continuous program for some time, that the consultant can make necessary changes when the performance is not up to the mark. So that has to be a dynamic and continuous process for some longer period of training program. Assuring the role play or case studies are relevant to the organization. Yes, sometimes it happens the trainer concerned, the consultant concerned is uh, giving some providing some training input in the form of some role play or some case study which may not be suitable to the organization where it is being done. So that has to be ensured by the people of the HR department. The case study should be relevant to the organization where the training is being given, or the role play which is being done is depending should be relevant to the roles being managed by the people in the organizations. Okay, so there is always a kind of cooperation and collaboration is required, and from that point of view, HR department has to be is their responsibility is not over by selection only. They have to be continuously in touch with the vendor or the consultant or the trainer till the program is over. Even after that, for getting the feedback, and even at the performance level, how the training has really affected the organization, the performance of the people to whom the training was given. So with that, we've come to, so we have seen certain points. I'll just have a quick bird's eye view of that what we have talked about. uh, what are the aspects to be considered while selecting a vendor? There's certain things which are to be seen, right? Mm, we have to see certain pertinent questions to get that point, particularly the background, the competence, the capability of the vendor. By getting reference from them, from where you can know come to know about their past performance, right? So on different areas. Then there is a need for managing the training provided, giving the proper direction, giving an understanding of the organization, make them understand what you really expected from them, what they're and what the trainer or the consultant is going to do in the organization. And then there is a question of outsourcing strategy and the cost. This is to be seen. Yes, in general, outsourcing strategy should be cost effective. And if it is cost effective for the organization, only then it should be used. Otherwise, not. In many cases, the strategy is mixed in terms of who is going to manage the entire training activity, that who is going to give the training, whether internal faculty or outside faculty, right? And the training is to be customized as the training needs. So there may be various mixed strategies required to get the best out of this situation. And as the last point, you have seen that role of HR is not over by selecting the vendors. It has to be a continuous process till the entire training process is over, the feedback is given, and the performance is done. With that, we have come to today's training program in the session. And if you have got any question, you may please. You're most welcome to ask me.
Uh,
Sir,
just There's just a request to show the slide before outsourcing strategy, a clear that one.
Outsourcing strategy and cost.
Before that, yes, one more, sir, before that.
Mani-
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, I have one question related to, when you talked today about the outsourcing strategy and the vendor selection. And I mean, we all are aware that, whenever any organization, especially the bigger ones, when they think about selecting a vendor, they have a lot of standardized process. How many years of experience, what are their training experience, talk to the people who have received the training and all. My question is more from the perspective of the vendor. So let's say today we are getting the training and we have to establish ourselves as a trainer or a training company. What should be our sales pitch in that case? Because we do not have any relevancy in terms of customer base. Rather, additionally, we do not have even the credibility in the, the training, what you say, society, where we can talk about volume about like this has been the training sessions that we have given. In that case, how in case a new trainer or a training company, if they want to pitch in without the credibility and all, how they can actually sell their products? I mean, what I actually see is training program is a sort of product and training is a service that they are going to provide. So as a company or as an individual trainer, how initially they can create a pitch and they can actually try to get good projects or good training, programs for them.
Well, this is definitely a proper question and very relevant question. But the first thing you should understand that every trainer or every consultant was at some particular point of time, he was giving the training program for the first time. It happened with everyone, right? And at that
Right,
point in time, he may not have that those credentials to prove his competence, right?
right,
Now, what generally happens is that you are lucky if you get some contact which is a known person who really introduce you to the industry for the first time, and that's a great moment, and if you keep on trying, your first thing is to get a contact from an organization where you may have got some known people, and uh, that can help you to launch for the first time. And once you go inside somewhere, and then it becomes your credibility, that it becomes your credential, and you can show it to others. This is number
right,
one. This is number one. Now, there may be certain indirect things by which you can really create your influence for the first time. Now, it is quite possible. That's why it is said, and I tell my trainers always that as a trainer, you should be a writer also, you should be an author. And the area in which you are working, you should be able to write something. And if you write something, either it is your blog or it is your articles that you're writing or you have published a book, that becomes an additional thing which can really help you to get attracted to by other people. They really accept that credential as calling you for the first time, right? So that is one thing. And the third thing is your competence in terms of your qualifications and experience that you have got. Your qualification and experience sometimes really can influence others to call you for the first time. And when you get an opportunity, you should be able to do the best, and that becomes your credential for going to the next person. I think these are few things which are very important, and which you should, as a trainer for the first time, you should meticulously do that and see to start your journey.
Thank you,
Am I
sir.
right? Do you understand my point?
Yes.
You're not giving any response to it. It's all right?
Yes, sir. I said it was very good. The inputs were actually, I mean, I noted the inputs.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, Mr. Anupam, any question?
No, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Mhm. No other question. You don't require me at all. So if you don't have any other question, then we may have to call it a day today, right? So, all right. May we finish this program? Well, all the best. Thank you very much for being with me. God bless you. Take care.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Happy Diwali in advance to everyone.
Thank you. Same to you
Yeah,
all.
same.
Happy Diwali, everyone.
Happy Diwali to all of you. Thank you.
Bye.